Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. And thank you for being here for the latest edition of the Reflections webinar series from the UNDP Independent Evaluation Office. My name is Deka Musa. I am the Regional Evaluation Advisor for the Evaluation Office of UNDP based in Addis Ababa. I'll be moderating the webinar. The reflection series, by way of background, is a lessons learned paper that synthesizes lessons from past evaluations and evaluative studies to support organizational learning about what works and what doesn't in different development contexts. The aim of this series is to provide relevant, useful, and accessible lessons to UNDP country offices and the wider community of development practitioners. This one benefited from early engagement with and the insights of the youth team in the Regional Bureau for Africa. Today, we'll be discussing the reflections paper on youth and development, which synthesizes lessons from evaluations conducted across countries and regions. The paper explored what helped youth programs move beyond short-term activities and towards sustained opportunities to influence and resilience. Youth are often described as the future, but one of the key messages from the paper is that youth are very much a development priority of the present. Around the world, young people are navigating complex realities shaped by changing labor markets, digital transformation, climate pressures, conflict, and shrinking civil space. Today's discussion will focus on what evaluation evidence tells us about how programs can better support young people, not only through skills and employment, but also through participation, innovation, peace building, and well-being. Please do feel free to post your comments and questions throughout the session in the chat. It is now my pleasure to welcome Joseph Abraha, who will walk us through the key findings and lessons from the paper. Joseph is evaluation specialist at UNDP IEO. He's based in New York, and he is the author of the paper. Our reflections paper identifies 6 broad lessons from evaluations, covering everything from skills and employment to youth voice, digital inclusion, peace building, and psychosocial support. To take us through these lessons, I'm pleased to hand over to Joseph. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Deka. Alice, could you share the slides? Yeah, thank you so much, Deka, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. I will be briefly presenting the key lessons from the reflection paper on youth and development. Next slide, please. Next, yeah. So since Deka has bravely summarized the context around the youth as a systems opportunity and development challenge, which needs the governments and the partners to develop effective programming, I will just start my presentation with the what we learned from the evaluation reports. Next slide, please. So as Deka said, this reflection paper identifies 6 key lessons on what works on youth development and youth programming from about 40 UNDP evaluations and the 5 external evaluations, including the interagency synthesis reports on youth. And this, most of the reports are conducted from the year 2020 to 2025. So in this webinar, I will basically focus on the 3 key lessons present here, but I will also speak, but the paper has also included other 3 lessons. For instance, lesson 3 highlights how the digital tools can help young people to gain the future-ready skills, to access jobs, and to connect with markets. And lesson 5 also talks about or shows how young people could contribute effectively to peace building, especially when they are recognized as peace actors and when they are connected to legitimate local institutions. And lesson 6 speaks about the mental health and psychosocial support, or the MHPSS, which is an essential component of sustaining youth participation and resilience, particularly in the fragile and conflict-affected settings. Next slide, please. So let me start with the first lesson that is related to youth empowerment and livelihoods. So the evaluations showed that UNDP youth employment and livelihood interventions were more effective where skills development was shaped by labor market demand and when they are, of course, linked to practical routes into jobs. So many of the UNDP interventions focused on the supply side, or the supply side support, mainly on training, entrepreneurship, and employability. But these activities were useful as they improved the confidence, motivation, and work readiness of young. But the evaluation also showed that this training alone, or the supply side only support, is not enough, though it is essential. So UNDP used employment and empowerment interventions worked best when programs started with labor market and at the same time value chain analysis. And then when they connected the skills training with placements, internships, mentorship, or access to finance or access to markets. So this means that youth programs should consider the demand side measures, not only the supply side measures. And at the same time, it needs also the public and private sector employment schemes, plus the supporting policy environments. Maybe here in the slide, you might see the arrows, but these arrows does not indicate a kind of linear process. I just put them to show what components are being included here. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the country examples on skills development to actual work opportunities. So as you can see from the slides, in Pakistan, for instance, the youth empowerment program linked TVET and the job placement to private sector demand and worked with more than 60 companies across 4 industries. And at the same time, in South Africa, UNDP Automotive Training Pilot and aligned the TVET program with industry needs, and some of the graduates were, of course, directly observed by Toyota South Africa. And in South Sudan, the Youth Empowerment Project shows how skills are linked to actual work. And I hope our panelist Sheila from South Sudan will speak more about this. But in general, these examples show that the transition from skills development to work requires partnerships, including the private sector, and at the same time, it requires follow-up, and it requires also the demand side connections. Next slide, please. And this is lesson 2, which is about the regional youth platforms. So the evaluations found that the regional youth platforms, such as the Africa Youth Connect and the Youth Collab in Asia Pacific, added the most value when they are linked to the young people's ideas and innovations to follow-up support. And the evaluations that we include show that such kind of platforms are useful because they create the visibility, they create also the networks and the convening power. But the visibility alone was not enough, and the platforms were stronger when they are connected connected young people to mentors, to finance, to market, and kind of policy spaces. And at the same time, the evaluative evidence also showed that very broad mandates and unclear partner roles usually weakens the platforms, which is mainly observed in in Africa Youth Connect. On the other hand, clearer country ownership, defined delivery roles, having a kind of structured ecosystem that supports along the downstream, the upstream, and midstream levels usually strengthens these platforms. So the main lesson or the main message here is that the platforms need to function as a coordination architecture, not only as a communication or event platforms. Next slide, please. So these are examples about the use platforms at regional level. So the use collab in Asia and the Pacific provides useful example on more on the structured platform model. And I hope our panelists Ben will speak more about this later on. And the other example that we have was about the Use Connect Rwanda, which shows an importance of strong political leadership in the national ownership. So Rwanda Use Connect was successful because it was mainly anchored in the government leadership and with, of course, a kind of regular engagement. But at the same time, if we look at the Zimbabwe and the Cameroon and other Use Connect in Africa, they show a kind of limits in the Use Connect. So these examples in general shows that the use platforms need clear functions. They also need resources and delivery arrangements from the very start in order to get the influence that we are looking for. Next slide, please. And this is lesson 4, and which is about youth participation in governance. So the evaluation showed that youth participation in governance become more meaningful when young people had defined roles and when they have visible routes from voice to decisions. So here the evaluation showed that the many programs created space for young people to, through participation in councils, or it's through participation in youth parliaments or forums and advisory bodies. And these platforms give them or help them to build their confidence, to build their civic skills and visibility. But the problem was the participation was more influential. When the young people had clearer roles in setting priorities, in leadership, in shaping proposals, or in engaging in decisions and the kind of implementing initiatives. But when young people were brought in the later stage and asked them only to validate the decisions that we are already made, or the participation becomes quite symbolic. So the lesson is, here is that the youth governance mechanisms need clear mandate. They need resources at the same time, and they need the regular entry points and feedback loops in order to have a clear, meaningful participation. Next slide, please. And this example shows the ways of linking with, youth participation in governance. For instance, the Sri Lanka example showed that UNDP worked with leaders and youth parliamentarians to strengthen the civic and political engagement. And the evaluation found that, positive results on youth in community engagement, in voluntarism, and the political participation. At the same time, in Armenia, the women and the youth advisory councils, advisory spaces linked the community heads, and this enables the youth to participate in local governance and at the same time to participate in community initiatives. And across these different examples, the central issue is whether or not youth are invited, but the issue is that whether their participation changes the decisions, the implementation, and they have a part in the accountability process. Next slide, please. So basically, to close my presentation, the main message from the paper here is that the youth programming becomes stronger when it moves from, from individual activities and it connects the young people to the systems. And you can from here you can also get the full paper, and I invite you to read the full paper. And thank you so much, and I look forward to the discussions. Take over to you.
Thank you, Joseph, for that excellent overview of the paper. What I like most about it is that the paper actually moves beyond asking whether youth activities were implemented, and instead asks what helps young people achieve lasting outcomes, whether that is in employment, in influence, in decision making, peace building, or in resilience. To help us unpack these lessons further, we have an outstanding panel representing different regional and country office perspectives. I'm pleased to welcome Sheila Ngatia, Deputy Representative for Program in UNDP Sudan, Raquel Leandro, Youth Empowerment Specialist at the UNDP Regional Services Center for Africa, and Binyam Gebrezgi, Civil Society and Youth Program Specialist at the UNDP Youth CoLab in Asia and the Pacific region. Thank you all for joining us. Raquel, let me start with you. Having reviewed the paper and its findings, what resonates most strongly with you from the perspective of the emerging Africa Youth Portfolio, from the emerging UNDP Youth Portfolio in Africa? What lessons do you think are particularly important for Africa at this moment? Over to you, Raquel.
Thank you, Daka, and well, a big congratulations to the UNDP Independent Evaluation Office on this paper, and thank you everyone who made the time to join us as well. I think the reflection paper came at a key moment for UNDP in Africa because we were looking into develop the first regional portfolio, and we decided to focus on youth. So while much of the world is aging, Africa is the global center of youth population growth. About 2/3 of Africans are under 35. And we know that this profile presents both risks and opportunities. So for us, we saw, yes, we need to do something else if we want to move away from fragmented and siloed interventions, because the systems, the institutions, and the programmatic approaches so far, most of them remain treating youth as a side issue or just engaging them in a symbolic manner. And for that, we wanted to respond to this mismatch, having three goals: working with and for youth as co-creators, aligning systems and institutions with this demographic reality, ensuring that we have policies and programs that reflect the realities of the youth. And this spoke directly to what Joseph just mentioned, and also to provide a dynamic framework for adaptive cross-sectoral programming that drives long-term systemic change. So what does it mean? It means that we wanted to move away from different projects and programs and have an integrating response to multiple changes, right? That means that if we want to empower youth, it's not enough if we look into the civic and the political side, right? We need to look into the social and the economic elements. We need to look into the mental health. And I will shortly walk you through what were the findings that we had. So basically, to design the portfolio, we use the system thinking approach with youth, with the African Union, with regional economic commissions, with private sector, UNDP colleagues across different thematic areas. And what we came today, and I will explain how it resonates very well with the different 6 lessons that we just heard. So basically, the first priority area identified was on digital, AI, and future abundance. So looking into the skills and expanding access to youth employment, employment and financing opportunity on the green, blue, and economy sector, right? So that links with lesson 1 and also lesson 3 on the digital tools as well, right? And this is fundamental because at present we have 10 million African youth entering the job market and only 3 million jobs created, right? So we need to bridge this gap. The second priority area is on next generation institutions. What do institutions mean here? Not just the formal institution, but the rules and the norms that operate our society. So how do we make these institutions more youth responsive and accountable? How do we shift the narrative? So this responds to lesson 4 on youth participation in governance, and to lesson 5 linking with the role of youth promoting peace and security, right? With the youth peace and security agenda. The third priority area out of 4, so bear with me, it's on youth agency, right? How do we develop the skills of youth so that they have the capacity to engage in formal spaces and also to amplify existing spaces? So this connects us with the youth platforms as coordination structures, and also the one on youth participation in governance. So I'm actually very pleased to announce that 2 days ago, UNDP in Africa, we launched the Africa Youth Co-Creators Council. So it's exactly for that, to have an institutionalized platform for youth to contribute to UNDP programming initiatives. Finally, our fourth priority area, which came out very, very strongly, is on mental health and well-being, right? So when we work on youth empowerment, we need to consider how do youth feel. Is it the impact of climate change that is causing distress? Is it the violent conflict that is affecting them? But this needs to be included. And I'm very pleased that that it was also identified as the sixth lesson on youth well-being and psychological support. So in conclusion, I think for us, this paper served us very well. Because we were able to apply it exactly into a program initiative. Thank you so much, and over to you, Decca.
Thank you very much, Raquel, for that overview of the UNDP Africa Youth Portfolio and the linkages with the findings of the paper. One theme that comes through strongly in the paper is that youth platforms create the greatest value when they connect young people to real opportunities, not only visibility, but also mentoring, finance, networks, and influence. This brings me to Biniam. Biniam, drawing on the Youth Co-Lab experience and broader work across Asia and the Pacific, what does it take to build a youth ecosystem that continues creating opportunities for young people long after a project has ended? Over to you, Biniam.
Thank you. And again, also congratulations on this great study. I think it's rare that we bring together such a wide collection of research evaluations under one roof. We did a similar trial and error in 2016 when we started the Youth Co-Lab. We looked at the Asia Pacific youth employment, livelihoods type of programs, and we drew some lessons from that. So I'm really happy to come back to that. We just celebrated our 10 years of the Youth Co-Lab. I'm narrowing down on one of our projects. Similarly to Raquel, we do also have a portfolio with 5 sets of programs, and we're currently doing an evaluation on our youth and climate programming right now. So there will be another study we can look into lessons learned also. But for the Youth Co-Lab, it's really an initiative to advance the youth entrepreneurship ecosystem in Asia Pacific. And over the last 10 years, across all the Asia Pacific programs, we see really an evolution, shifting from similar to what Raquel was saying, youth-focused programming to systems-focused programming. And this is very much a lessons learned from previous evaluations, that there are no shortcuts to youth programs. I think everyone in this room probably sees that and feels it, but it really takes a whole ecosystem to really influence. For example, as in the report and in our lived experience, it really takes a village to grow such kind of a startup. So for us, as we say, 10-year, we just came out last week of our summit. Very exciting. We brought all our ecosystem players, and one of the what we noticed is that we designed almost for failure, because we knew that 80% of the young entrepreneurs that start fail. Today, 10 years later, out of our programs, 80% are succeeding. And we did a couple of things that I think really, we picked up from these evaluations. And that's really to focus on transforming the entrepreneurship ecosystem. We know that thriving youth entrepreneurship ecosystem depends on a series of dimensions. And no single partner can deal with all of these angles, right? Enabling policies and regulations, skilled entrepreneurial, skilling the entrepreneurs, access to finance, strong business support systems, opportunity to reach markets. So really access to market is critical, not just access to finance, as well as a culture of innovation and technology. All of this is on our webpage. So if you want to know more about Youth Collab, just feel free to reach out to it. But we also see very much that we had to look at pathways. I think that was one of the key messages, to move away from, a single type of activities to a long journey of building the capacities of young people. So a couple of things we designed around was very much for, youth outcomes are constrained by systems, not by individual capacity. That's one of the really good lessons from our journey. So the evidence really shows that young people are not lacking motivation or ideas. They really want to face structural challenges. However, they're faced with all these challenges that we already mentioned around finance, and access to institutional support or mentorship. So the lessons learned is that, don't just focus on strengthening individual skills, but also really look at the whole system in which these young people are operating. That's one of the key programmatic efforts we did, and there's lots to say there. Second one is around institutionalizing the pathways, so that it's really embedded in the programs, so that we transition a little bit from just doing trainings, dialogues, and fellowships to more building awareness into systems, so that could capture these engagements, so that it's predictable, it is expected, investments are coming, right? Inclusion continues to be a major challenge for our programming. And here, what we realize is that inclusion is achieved when programs are designed, outreach, delivery, monitoring is really like designed towards those that are left behind. There's no like one size fit all. There's no one model that would apply. So, for example, now we are launching an intersectional guide. It's like a checklist for how to make sure you don't leave persons with disability or indigenous or rural or whatever it may be. It's very difficult to build for intersectionality, but it's one of the reasons why our projects fail. And that's something that evaluations have been telling us over and over again. If you want to reach a young woman from indigenous community, rural area, is a very different design from reaching a young man in an urban setting. And sorry to say, a lot of programs that we used to see were designed for both in one sweep. That doesn't work in 2026. You really need to understand the challenges. And this also speaks to the digital programs that we are running. A lot of youth programs are now pivoting to AI. And here we really make an effort to first build for offline for those that can't, and then we do hybrid, and then we do fully fully digital. So in these cases, we really understand that the current barriers is very much around internet connectivity, cost of internet, availability of devices. The list is long. So quite a few lessons learned that we built in. So Youth Collab is now rounding up the first decade, but for the next decade, it is really those lessons learned that we bring in. There's a lot of other recommendation in our 10-year report particularly around intermediary organization for scaling. We realized very, very quickly that we couldn't reach the last mile unless we have partnership with CSOs, universities, and so forth. So a lot of good lessons learned. I've taken too much time now, but just want to thank you for an excellent report, and say that it resonates very much with our experience. And I'm also happy that, when you look at a domain over a period of 10 years, you can really see how you move it and shift it from the margins to the table, to the center. For today, an agenda like youth entrepreneurship is very much a place of hope and excitement for all continents, particularly in Asia Pacific. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Binyam, for those insights and reflections. Let's now turn to implementation realities, particularly in fragile and crisis-affected settings. One of the strongest messages from the paper is that youth employment programs are most effective when skills development is linked to actual pathways into work and livelihoods. Sheila, let me come to you. Based on your experience in South Sudan, what have been the biggest challenges in helping young people transition from skills training to sustainable livelihoods? Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you so much, Decca, and really congratulations to the Independent Evaluation Office for this very important paper and convening this forum. Because the issue of youth and development is really so critical here in our region of Africa. And I think, as has been said also by Raquel, many countries in sub-Saharan Africa really grappling with this issue of how to harness a very young population, in terms of, their being contributors to economic growth, social cohesion. And really from UNDP South Sudan, we appreciate that you've also asked us to share our experiences, given what you, have identified as really a fragile, context, a post-conflict. And so maybe many participants here can relate to this context. And really, the evaluation that was done for one of our programs really did demonstrate that really beyond training, beyond skills development, that we really need to integrate market-driven skills training with entrepreneurship development, with value chain support, and this also includes financial inclusion, financial support, to be able to then, improve the employment outcomes and income generation. So really looking beyond just training and skills development. In terms of then really some of the challenges, and there are really a number of structural and contextual challenges that we can speak to. I think one of those that we have really over time learned is to see what has been a disconnect between training programs and the actual demands of the market. And this is why this has to really be a very close nexus between the public sector and private sector. Because the market demands, when you talk of market demands, you're talking about what does the private sector, what do businesses need? So that to ensure that the training is really tailored towards that, and also towards being able to develop certain value chains that will link to employment and income generation for young people, for women, and those who are outside in terms of the economic periphery. So this issue of the skills mismatch is been a major constraint. Another constraint, of course, that is, I think, seen in many places is the issue around limited budget allocation, limited financial resources that have been allocated, to be able then to harness this productive capability of young people to participate in the labor market. And so you see this is really manifested also in high levels of unemployment, high levels also of underemployment. Young people may be employed, but in terms, of their, their earning power, in terms of the growth of their businesses, this is also a problem. Again, in a fragile context such as the one that we have, the issue of macroeconomic, instability, challenges to do with also political uncertainty, sometimes has also led to impacting the operational capacities, of MSMEs. And this, also includes, as I mentioned, the whole issue around financial constraints. The issue around financing is a very, very big challenge in contexts such as ours. And this is why, working with partners such as the Africa Development Bank, to be able to address this challenge, becomes really a very tangible response to a very real challenge that many youth and women-led MSMEs experience. As I move to wind up, we've also seen where the issue around conflict and insecurity, the absence of sustained peace, really has also, affected and disrupted, business operations. It constrains markets access, and it really undermines the continuity of livelihoods. And in our context where you have a predominantly, humanitarian, focus, that sometimes is then crowds out development investments. This also is in a way constraining private sector growth and limits availability of productive employment. And that is why then, for us to be able to then bring together this nexus of public sector, private sector, partners such as the Africa Development Bank, bilateral donors like the Netherlands, who were a big, supporter for us as the UN system and the UNDP, to be able to then see what are the pathways, to invest in training, market-led skills development, and then entrepreneurship and value chain development. And then, to also see where are the opportunities to have industrial attachments, internships, so that also, we have places where these young people can also be placed to start, actual on-the-job learning, based on the skills that they have acquired. So in a nutshell, there's a lot that we can share from our evaluation. It is available, and there's also a lot available on our UNDP South Sudan website, and I would also encourage participants to come and visit and learn much more what we have to offer. Thank you, Decca.
Thank you, Sheila, for sharing your experiences programming youth interventions in crisis and fragile, crisis affected and fragile settings. And thank you once again to all three panelists. What is interesting from the discussion is that many of the lessons point in the same direction and have highlighted that youth programs work best when they move beyond one-off interventions and strengthen the broader systems around young people, whether labor markets, institutions, innovation ecosystems, peace structures, and support networks. And our panelists have all spoken to this. Raquel spoke about an integrated approach offer that they worked on. Binyam stressed the need to strengthen the ecosystem. And I think Sheila spoke to a whole of system approach, whole of government approach. Now let's turn to the audience. We want to hear from you. Please raise your hand or post your questions in the chat, and we will try to get through as many as we can. Who's going to break the ice? Please raise your hand or alternatively post your comment or question in the chat box. Yes, Ian, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself and come in.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to make a few remarks. I'm here in Senegal working on child and youth related issues. And I'm just wondering if the panelists could flesh out 2 or 3 of the dimensions which I think are important to effective action. One of them is the coordination issue. There seemed to be a plurality, a multiplication of many initiatives which carry the label youth. We also talk about youth as if youth is some undisaggregated entity. Is there anything that people want to tell us about? Which are the youth we're talking about? Are they the younger youth? Are they the older youth? Are they the female youth? Are they the male youth? Are they the youth which are educated with diplomas and no jobs? or those who are excluded. I think to take advantage of these lessons, we need to have a more granular look, which we can't discuss, obviously, in this context now. But I think that's the missing piece, maybe for the next webinar, where we drill down on some of these questions. But I think issues of the coordination in general, how to get some more cohesion, more coherent approach, which ties up with the weakness of governments. They have a Ministry of Youth and Sport and something else and something else. And, you know, so for Africa, the central issue is not youth employment, it's employment, full stop. I mean, half of the population, at least over 18, are going to be in that youth category up to 35. So I think this whole issue of really resituating the question, giving it more central policy importance, and this ties in with coherence, going to scale, and coordination, and some disaggregation. And of course, behind that, all the funding issue. I'm sorry, I've been all over the shop, but at least gives some additional reactions. And congratulations to UNDP, to Isabel and all the team. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. We have the Youth Olympic Games in Dakar, by the way, in November. So that's another opportunity to give visibility and a new identity to young people.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ian, for those reflections. We don't have any other hands up at the moment. To try and reflect on the issue raised by Ian, largely around coordination, duplication, can I come to you, Sheila, as you are closest to implementation? And by the way, I do think the paper does offer a definition of youth, right, Joseph?
Yeah, on the definition of use, of course, there is unclarity even in the definition of use. So in the UNDP, some of them it includes 15 to 24, but at the same time in the African region it includes up to 35 years of age. So it includes both the earlier age and later age. So there is still unclarity around that. Maybe Sheila can tell us, since she has the practical work on that, and Raquel can speak to it as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Ian, I think you've raised two very, very critical issues. The first on this issue of coordination. You know, this has to really be approached, you know, from the, I think one of the very key dimensions is on the policy and the regulatory, dimension. And that, of course, is, you know, at the national level, that is bringing together the relevant ministries that are dealing with this issue of youth, bringing together, you know, the private sector, bringing together the UN system, NGOs, development partners, bilateral, multilateral partners who are all working around, you know, supporting the policy, legislative, regulatory aspect. When it comes to implementation, and again, you know, I think the great experience that we also have seen is that when you now are, you know, talking about effective, you know, engagement, assessment, coordination, you know, it has to be really at the field level, at the state level. Coordination must go where the implementation must happen. And for us, you know, this means going beyond the center. In our region, in South Sudan, for example, this means, you know, we have 10 states and 3 administrative areas. So what we are also really trying to do is have an approach that is at state level, bringing together all the different actors who are funding or who are rolling out programs or implementing programs or projects that are targeted towards youth employment, or if it is to be more specific around, for example, youth and agriculture value chain development, who is doing what? This is really important because we have seen, you know, over decades, huge, significant investment, you know, but there's been quite a lot of fragmentation. So that, you know, you have not been able to really, you know, harness the gains and have that sustainability. And because of the sheer numbers that we are talking about, you know, and the young population, that issue of coordination then becomes even much more pronounced. And in this situation where funding, you know, constraints are real. So the issue around coordination must happen at various levels, at the national level, but also at the sub-national level, and also very specifically focused based on the sectors. I like the second point just directly on, what the issue you raised, because youth is not homogeneous. It's a very big word when you talk of youth empowerment, youth agenda, youth development. And again, it must be context specific. It will vary, and it must be, really tailored to the context, the country, the region, the sub-region in the country. What we have learned for us is that before you go in to start implementation, you really have to have, a very well-grounded assessment in terms of who are you targeting. As you define your theory of change, you must really have this in terms of evidence-driven. Who are you targeting? What is the approach? To learn also from, the lessons of the past. So it's not a one size fits all, and it's not a big bang approach. You really must be very clear in terms of the interventions, that you're going with. What is the scale with which you're going in? But also then to know, that assessment must be able to guide you. Which youth are you talking about? And of course, there are all these, they're different. There's the rural youth, the urban youth. But even in the rural, there's some, based on, the context of each country. There are communities which are agriculture communities. There are others, which are, they're traders. There are others which also the education levels are different. The level of investment or development in a region. So again, it goes back to the assessment. It must be an evidence-led planning process to develop these programs and projects. Let me stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Sheila. There was another hand up. I don't see it anymore.
I had seen Aminata.
Yes, Aminata. Aminata.
Hello.
Do you want to
Hello,
come in?
everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Thank you, dear colleagues. I just want to, I don't see if you see my camera. Okay. Oh.
No, we don't see. Your camera is off. Now we
Okay.
see you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, dear colleagues. So, greeting from Senegal. We have also a youth portfolio. And I totally share the idea that he and talk about collaboration and coordination. We see many initiatives led by the government. But here in Senegal, our approach was to see UNDP as an integrator, also as a laboratory of solution. So we do not expect anymore that we can create so much job from ourselves with our program. We don't have the money, and the UNDP, the aid international framework is changing. But we can work with the government, the private sector, and those companies who have solution. I will just start for the green mobility, for example. We decide to invest on sectors that youth as leading, sectors that are marginalized. We say, for example, about motor taxi. Here in Senegal, in many regions, young people are running taxi motor businesses, but these taxis are, discriminated. They are, for the common Senegalese, these are creating, accident, disorder. But for UNDP, we see this as a resilience tool for young people. For example, in Jigenshaw, one our main field offices, we have seen 20,000 motorcycles run by young people. How can we exclude these from our programming? We cannot. So we create a UNDP, a green mobility project, which create UNDP as integrator. The government has an agency which gives a guarantee fund in a bank. The bank provides a loan for an aggregator who have well-designed motors, and this aggregator is giving the motor to the young people. So the young people are paying half the motor. They are paying per days, the company, and the company pay to the bank. UNDP was here an integrator of solution. So these are the type of solution we are running, and where we have evidence that it works. And we are also working on for taxes. Our portfolio have three main components: opportunities, agency, and narrative. We have to shift the narrative about employment. In Africa, the main sector are informal. So we have to work with informal. We have to take the narrative, change the narrative, how we can adapt ourselves to work with informal youth. And these are the main majority of youth. If not, we are just working on innovation, entrepreneurship, but what young people are doing. So this is our strategy in Senegal, bringing everybody on the table, not only the government. Because the government, they have the strategy, the policy, well designed, but they don't have the money. The private sector is the one who can invest, but they need guarantees that young people are going to pay the loan. And they cannot operate with each young people, but they can operate with company who have solution and have guarantees that they will pay the loan. So that what our experience is too big. I cannot share. I just wanted to focus on one example, but the lesson is we have to take young people as partner. They have their own solution. Young people are not waiting for technocratic to bring solution, but how we adapt ourselves to work with their solution, expand what is already working, and trust them more in our policy and our program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aminata, for sharing those perspectives and experiences. We are coming very quickly to the end of the webinar. We have 5 minutes left, and in those 5 minutes, I would like to ask Raquel to elaborate a bit more on the comment that you posted about the youth charter and the definition of youth, and perhaps touch a little bit more on coordination. And then Sheila Bruno is asking you if you developed a youth action plan for implementation in the comments. So over to you, Raquel.
Thank you so much. And also in the interest of time, I will be very, very brief. Jan, you are right, spot on. So this is what came out very clearly during the whole time we spent co-designing with youth, which of course, those are the youth that speak English. Those are the youth that are well connected to be recommended to participate in this type of workshop. So I hear you, right? But this was the reflections we had. Is that it's very different if you are targeting a youth from a rural community that does not have a smartphone or any access to internet than the youth that is in the urban area with a university degree, to the youth that who is an IDP or who is a refugee, right? So I think we need to, for these elements came very strong, but the challenge, if you ask me, is how do we translate this awareness? Yes, we can have specific interventions, but to fully know if we are reaching, we need disaggregated data, right? And the biggest challenge is the data evidence, right? That if you can collect it, disaggregating from the urban to the rural areas vis-a-vis the education that the different people have. So this is something that needs to, that we need to do all better. And this leads me to my second point on the coordination, right? And how do we work on youth? Because it's, is extremely broad. it's also in many countries in Africa, what we have are UN youth programs, right? To which different UN agencies, funds, and programs are asked to contribute, right? In others, we operate under the government framework when there is, for instance, a national youth policy that translates into a national youth action plan, and then different entities, including civil society, and of course, private sector, if they want to come in. This is how it translates. So we see, for example, 39 national chapters of the Youth Connect, right? Which is a government-led initiative, which so far has focused much more on the socio-economic elements, the digital components, but we also see a trend looking into what we discussed here. So I think those are avenues that we need to, to explore more. Because it is indeed true. There is a lot of duplication of efforts and no coordination in some cases. Thank you so much, and over to you, Deka.
Thanks very much, Raquel. Tina has brought to my attention that there is one question posted in the Q&A, and I'll read it out, and perhaps the asker could also take the floor if you so wish to, please. The question is, weak alumni support is listed as a weakness. What does good alumni engagement actually look like in practice for youth programs, especially across different countries and contexts? Biniam, can I come to you to try and address that question?
Thanks. When it comes to alumni, I think we have everyone we train. I mean, first of all, we have that intergenerational can also be a little bit shorter time spans. Those we have trained come in as mentors for those that are coming in the next cohorts. When you do a 10-year, I think we have in our cohort over 500,000 young entrepreneurs who it's a movement, across the region. And one of the designs, we built it into the design to have this platform where the alumni continuously support the incoming young innovators, social innovators, and so forth. And alumni is not just those young people we train. It's also because our theory changes that it happens at the how to say policy level, ecosystem level, as well as the individual for young people. So all the government supporters that we've had, the champions of this agenda, continues to support the new ministers that comes in across the 30 markets that we have done the Youth Collab. So it's about setting up platforms, building that social, social capital, the camaraderie, to want to give back, to press that elevator and bring back the next cohort. So it's building that into a design, and we can share with you. We don't have time now, but happy to dig deeper into Youth Connect or Youth Collab or YLP in the Arab region. We have a lot of programs that are reaching a decade of learning, and it's very important to take stock of these. So I really appreciate that, Deka and Joseph and team, that you guys are recognizing that these are not a 1 year of lessons learned. It takes time to build these kind of alumni and movements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Binyam, and thank you to everyone, the panelists, the participants, for those excellent questions, comments, and before we close, can we please ask everyone to take a minute or two to respond to the short poll that has been posted by Alice Cheyun in the chat to help us plan for future webinars. Many thanks to our presenter, Joseph, our panelists, and all participants who joined us today. We hope today's conversation has sparked new ideas and practical reflections for your own work. I think we can take the discussion offline. We We have just began, I think, a discussion which can be taken offline. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you again at a future Reflections webinar.